This is Rounded Reading, and this book is called 10 Poems to Change Your Life. It's by Roger Houston, and it's a collection of works from different poets. So in this book, I'm going to read one poem, Ode to My Socks by Pablo Neruda, and it is a translated poem. I don't know what the original language was, but Maru Mori bought me a pair of socks, which she knitted with her own sheepherder hands. 2 socks soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as if they were 2 cases knitted with threads of twilight and the pelt of sheep. Outrageous socks. My feet became 2 fish made of wool, 2 long sharks of ultramarine blue crossed by 1 golden hare, 2 gigantic blackbirds, 2 cannons. My feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were beautiful, that for the first time my feet seemed to me unacceptable, like 2 decrepit firemen unworthy of that embroidered fire, of those illuminous socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them as schoolboys save fireflies, as scholars collect sacred documents. I resisted the wild impulse to put them in a golden cage, and each day gave them birdseed and chunks of pink melon like explorers in the jungle who handed over the rare green deer to the roasting pit and eat it with remorse. I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. And the moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it's a matter of 2 woolen socks in winter. I decided to do this poem because recently in one of my artist accounts, I talked about the wonder of ordinary things and how that might translate when we go into space. And I think about ordinary things a lot in my artwork. And I think the idea that you can treasure your treasures to a point of tragedy is a really relevant idea, and I think it's been part of my experience in the last few years trying to sort myself out and trying to figure out what things I should be having and what things I shouldn't be having, and figuring out all of the physical things in your life in some ways is figuring out yourself. And I decided to completely relinquish some of my treasures. I decided that some things needed to be used or just gotten rid of. And the idea, especially clothes, I think is a big one, that you have clothes that you love so much you don't wear them, and then maybe you never wear them, and maybe you grow out of them, or maybe by the time you do wear them, you don't love them anymore and they don't make any sense anymore. That's a big one. For me, one of my treasures that I wasn't using was this cup. And I've talked about this cup before. I had this cup in some paintings. Well, one painting, and then I've used it in other prints. This is my great uncle's cup, and I very specifically remember him drinking instant Folgers coffee in it and telling me about you don't necessarily need to wash a cup if you only drink coffee in it, which is ridiculous because he was also putting canned milk and sugar cubes with it, but anyway, but I use this cup now, and I know someday I'm gonna microwave this cup, or I'm gonna drop it and it's gonna shatter, or my kid's gonna get it and it's gonna shatter. And I know that. I know someday this cup will be gone. And I used to keep this cup in a box, and I used to get other cups from Goodwill, and I ended up with a kind of large collection of old, interesting cups, and I use them, and I think about them, and I think about who made them, and I think about how they were made, and different types of ceramics, and then I I like to look at the different places they come from, because cups actually have a lot of information on the bottom sometimes. And then I had other cups that I really liked that got broken. And I realized not incorporating this cup into my life, what was I saving it for? I was saving it for some mythical, magical time that I didn't know what it was. And it's not as good as using it. It's not as good as incorporating it into part of what my life is. And someday it'll be gone. And that's okay, because everything will. Yeah. I had some other thoughts and I've kind of lost them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the poem.